Prior to his coronation in 1930, in 1922, Selassie made it known that he was not down with the teachings of the Tewahedo Church. For one, he made it known to the world that Menelik I was not the first king of Ethiopia. Rather, he was the 99th king. In other words, the Kevin the Gus tries to erase over 3,500 years of Ethiopian monarchy with their folklore, which was created in England by someone named James Bruce. Hence, his manuscripts was published in England after his death. And the Tewahedo Church uses those European words as scripture, as if that's true. But Selassie was like, no, this is just our story. The story of him, the root of David, being a descendant of Solomon. How could Solomon come before the root of David, the king of all kings, Jacob himself? So let's watch.
England and France abandoned Ethiopia to Mussolini.
Notice England abandoned Ethiopia.
Or opposition to me.
Since his restoration in 1941, the Lion of Judah has carried out a program of modernization and of political and social reform, and has begun to westernize the 2,000-year-old Coptic Christian Ethiopia.
Hence, before he was crowned King of Kings, his nation was called a Coptic Christian state. Hence, it was infiltrated by Egypt, the Greco-Roman Egyptian Syriac Tewahedo Church. Let's watch. The original church is believed to have been built during the reign of Izana and has been rebuilt several times since then, including during the reign of Phasaelus in the 17th century. So anytime you see believed to have been, that means made up. But it was actually built in the 17th century. Saint Mary of Zion. In other words, they want you to follow the mother of Jesus, who is the grandson to Jacob. So it was a traditional place where Ethiopian emperors came to be crowned. And indeed, if an emperor was not crowned at Axum or did not at least have his coronation ratified by a special service at St. Mary of Zion, he could not be referred to by the title of Atsa or emperor. In other words, the title of defender of the faith was given to the emperor prior to Selassie being crowned. So that doesn't mean Selassie is defending their faith. Let's see what Selassie says. A new Haile Selassie Bible was made. In 1962, a new Amharic translation from Ge'ez alone was printed, again with the patronage of the emperor. Why? Realizing that there ought to be a revision from the original Hebrew and Greek of the existing translation. In other words, the Tewahedo Church added in so-called original Hebrew and Greek to his existing Ge'ez Bible. So he created a 72-book Bible. But as soon as they deposed him, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church went back to publishing the 81-book version. Hence, Selassie is not down with what they did. So he created his own 72-book version, and in 1986, they went back to the 81-book version. In other words, they wasn't following what he was saying. Hence, they better take heed. This is from his son. At the end of 7 days, the word of the Lord, Emperor Haile Selassie, came to me saying, Son Moses, of man, Jah, I have appointed you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak, and warn them for me. When I say to the wicked, you will surely die, and you do not warn him or her or speak out to warn the wicked from his or her sin, that he or her may live, that wicked man, woman shall die in his, her iniquity, I will hold you, Christ Moses, accountable for their deaths. Yet if you, son, have warned the wicked, and he, she, does not turn from his, her iniquity, but you, Christ, Moses, will have saved yourself. because you have obeyed me. In other words, follow God's words. And what did God tell Moses? This is what he told to the world. I have the highest respect for the Bible as a whole. Therefore, the Bible should not be cut into portions. In other words, the Tewahedo church is using the Old and New Testament format given to them by the Greco-Romans, Egyptian Syriacs. In other words, they try to put the future in the past. So what did God say? On this occasion, I address all those within our empire. Our Christianity is not restricted to a given church. And I stress above all that we do not wish to make distinctions. My advice to all is to fulfill the 10 commandments. You are aware of the contents of the 10 commandments and can elaborate on it. If the nation for which I am the emperor follows and accepts this, since it's also what I accept and follow. In other words, God followed the 10 commandments. And what does the 10 commandments say? You shall not make for yourself a carved image or a likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in the earth beneath. In other words, if I go to Tewahedo Church right now, they're going to show me a white Jesus picture and tell me that he's in heaven above. And you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath day of the Lord your God. Hence, follow his commandments. So in Ethiopia, if I go to Ethiopia right now, the Tewahedo Church has 2 Sabbath days. It celebrates Saturday and Sunday as the Sabbath. When God said, remember the seventh day, which will land on Sunday, is the Sabbath. Yet still, they're following Rome's seventh day Saturday at the same time, which is crazy to God. Hence, they're not following the commandments. Hence, he had to say this. Some people have written the story of my life representing as truth when in fact derives from ignorance, error, or envy. But they cannot shake the truth from its place, even if they attempt to make others believe it. Hence, Haile Selassie, I guess, haircut. So look what he says.
Pour la propagande, sérieux, on peut penser beaucoup. Seulement, c'est une propagande.
Hence, they're using propaganda. They're trying to change the story. So let's watch.
He created a strong, centralized monarchy. The country, with its 22 million people, revolves around his personal rule.
You are descendant, Your Imperial Majesty.
Notice the Canadian reporter is telling him that he's a descendant of Solomon and Sheba. He's not asking him. He's telling him. So Haile Selassie is going to say that is bullshnizzle. That was made up by James Bruce in Europe. Hence, he's just going to say this is just our story. He could have easily said, yes, I am. Instead, he says this.
From King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. You are descended, Your Imperial Majesty, from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
This is just our story, ancient history.
Yet still, the Tewahedo Church promotes it as if it's true. So let's see what God said. And said, O Lord, thou hast chosen thee only vine, one pit, one lily, one river, Zion unto thyself, one dove, one sheep, one people. Thou givest a law. And now, O Lord, why hast thou given this one people over unto many? And upon the one root hast thou prepared others. In other words, the root of David. So who's the root of David? Jacob. So what does it say? David, a root from his own family. Solomon finally slept with David, a root of his own family. Don't forget, Solomon is the son of King David. And Solomon is the root of David. Jacob is the root of David. How we know this? For Jah has chosen even Jacob for himself, Israel for his special property. Hence, God acknowledged Jacob as his firstborn. So Jacob, God acknowledged him as the firstborn. In other words, Haile Selassie the first, the root of David. And from him was to spring the man who won the favor of all, dear to God and men, Moses. That's why he says, this is just our story, ancient story.
Majesty from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
This is just our story, ancient story.
So what's the truth?
Egypt. He became emperor on November 2nd, 1930, and was crowned Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, King of Zion, conquering lion of the seed of Judah, power of the Trinity.
Abraham, Isaac,
Your
Jacob.
Imperial Majesty, you were 39 years old when you were crowned in 1930.
Yes.
Could you talk